14-year-old Maddie Ross, played by Haley Steinfeld, from Yell County, Arkansas, is adamant about getting revenge for her father's death in 1878. After attempting to talk a drunken Tom Chaney, played by Josh Brolin, out of murdering a fellow card player who had supposedly betrayed him, Frank Ross was killed by his hired hand. After stealing Ross's horse, Chaney left the town. Maddie conducts her own investigation because she is furious that no one cared to look into or convict Chaney. Maddie leaves her mother and two younger siblings behind and heads to Fort Smith, the site of her father's murder. Even at such a young age, Maddie is witty, self-assured, and a formidable negotiator. Reluctantly, she returns her father's now useless string of ponies to Call Stonehill, played by Dakin Matthews, earning $320 in the process. Maddie decides to employ a U.S. Marshal to find Tom Chaney after renting a room at the fort. Smith was boarding home, where her father had been staying prior to his passing. Reuben Rooster Cogburn, played by Jeff Bridges, the marshal regarded as the meanest and most fearless, is her choice after conferring with the local sheriff at a public execution. She follows Cogburn to a saloon and tries to hire him, but gets turned down. After a court hearing in which Cogburn testified, Maddie tries again, but this time, Cogburn rejects her because he doesn't think she has the $50 she offered him as payment for Chaney's capture. After a court hearing in which Cogburn testified, Maddie tries again, but this time Cogburn rejects her because he doesn't think she has the $50 she offered him as payment for Chaney's capture. A Texas Ranger named LaBeouf, played by Matt Damon, who is aware of Maddie's goal to prosecute Tom Chaney, approaches her at the boarding home. After Chaney killed a senator from Texas, LaBeouf tracked him down for a few months. He offers to use his and Cogburn's combined expertise to locate Chaney. Maddie declines LaBeouf's offer because he seems arrogant. The next day, Maddie repurchases Little Blackie, one of her father's ponies, to take on her adventure. She goes to see Cogburn, who has chosen to accept her offer, but he won't allow Maddie go with him as she had intended. Maddie appears to give in and tells her to be prepared for the excursion the following morning, after threatening to denounce Cogburn to the sheriff if he leaves with her $50. When Maddie rides her pony to Cogburn's accommodations in the morning, armed with her father's revolver, she finds that he has joined forces with LaBeouf, left her behind, and left her a train ticket back to Yell County. Maddie, incensed and offended, pursues his trail to a nearby river, where he observes Cogburn and LaBeouf from the other side. Maddie rides Little Blackie into the water, where they swim to the other side after the ferryman declines to take her across. Maddie's bravery seems to have impressed Cogburn, but her bossy demeanor is obviously bothering LaBeouf. LaBeouf leaves the mission after arguing with Cogburn, whom he despises as well, and mocks Cogburn for being harahied by a little girl. As they go on their adventure, Maddie and Cogburn get closer to one another. Cogburn learns that Tom Chaney is not too far ahead of them and that he might have teamed up with Lucky Ned Pepper, another bandit, and his crew. In an attempt to escape the cold, the two find a cabin at dusk. However, Cogburn knows the two men living inside as outlaws associated with the Ned Pepper gang, Moon, played by Domhnall Gleeson, and Emmett Quincy, played by Paul Ray. Moon is obviously in a lot of discomfort from the bullet wound on his leg. Cogburn thinks the rest of the Pepper gang will be at the cabin shortly because of the large quantity of food being prepared. If Moon provides information, he promises to take her to a doctor and allow them some time to get away. In a frantic attempt to get medical help, Moon starts speaking, but Quincy fatally stabs her before Cogburn shoots him. Moon acknowledges as he passes away that Lucky Ned is anticipated at the cottage that same evening. While they wait for the group to arrive, Cogburn and Maddie hide in the bushes close to the cabin. LaBeouf approaches the cabin first, carrying on the search by himself. But a few moments later, the Ned Pepper gang shows up. LaBeouf gets lassoed by one of them, and he is pulled from his horse. Cogburn fires at two of the gang members from cover, unintentionally hitting LaBeouf in the arm, and the others scatter. Even though LaBeouf is not thrilled to be working with Cogburn once more, he and Maddie bring the injured man into the cabin. Cogburn had a lot of alcohol during the evening and is very drunk when they leave the next morning. He and LaBeouf argue about who can shoot better, while Maddie tries to keep them focused. That evening, after making camp in the woods, Cogburn expresses his anger regarding their assignment. saying he's been dragged into a wild goose chase by a harpy in trousers and a nincompoop. He withdraws from the agreement, and LaBeouf leaves once more, but this time with true respect for Maddie. Both guys concur that it would be pointless to pursue Cheney's trail further. Maddie, disappointed, drifts off to sleep. When Maddie visits a nearby stream for water the following morning, he finds a stranger there tending to his horses. She is shocked to learn that it is none other than Tom Cheney. When Maddie pulls her father's revolver and tries to arrest Cheney, who knows her as Frank Ross's daughter, Cheney just looks confused by her presence. Maddie fires, barely grazing Cheney's arm, as an enraged Cheney advances with his gun. The rest of the Ned Pepper group has made camp on the opposite bank, and Cheney pulls her there. After spending the night sleeping in the woods, Cogburn hears the disturbance but arrives too late to save Maddie. Knowing Cogburn well, Lucky Ned Pepper, played by Barry Pepper, calls out to him across the stream and exchanges Maddie's life for plenty of time to get away. Assuming Maddie is unharmed, Cogburn promises not to pursue the gang and seems to ride off into the hills. Maddie's determination is admirable, and Pepper reassures her that she won't suffer any harm. Cheney is told to stay with Maddie and put her somewhere safe, while Ned and the other 3 gang members depart to deal with money. Cheney makes vain attempts to avoid the assignment. Even if Lucky Ned assures her otherwise, Maddie worries that when they are by themselves, Cheney will murder her. As the group leaves, Maddie promises to provide Cheney with an affidavit in exchange for him releasing her. Refusing, Cheney claims he just needs Maddie to be silent. LaBeouf, who had stayed in the vicinity and heard the earlier gunshots, knocks him out as he attacks her and puts a knife to her throat. He adds that after riding back to the woods, he met with Cogburn and gave him a strategy on how to save Maddie. He claims that Cogburn set up a confrontation with Lucky Ned. From atop a hill, Maddie and LaBeouf observe as Cogburn confronts Ned and the other 3 gang members. After pursuing Ned intermittently for a while, Cogburn offers Ned the option of being immediately executed or sent back to Fort Smith for hanging. When Ned calls Cogburn a one-eyed fat man, Cogburn gets on his horse and charges at him. With the reins between his teeth, he uses both hands to fire revolvers, killing the other 3 men and critically injuring Lucky Ned before his horse stumbles and traps Cogburn beneath. In his final moments of strength, Ned gets ready to murder Cogburn. LaBeouf demonstrates his marksmanship from the mountaintop by hitting Lucky Ned off his horse with a 400-yard rifle shot before the marshal is hurt. Shortly after, LaBeouf is rendered unconscious by Tom Cheney, who has now awoken and is attempting to seize LaBeouf's firearm. Maddie intercepts the gun and takes it for herself. Maddie orders Cheney to stand, and after achieving her revenge purpose, she shoots him in the chest, killing him. As Maddie stumbles backward into a deep pit, the blast recoils. When she calls for assistance, LaBeouf is still unconscious. When Cogburn shows up, he starts to use a rope to climb the wall of the pit and save her, but not before a rattlesnake bites Maddie's left hand. After retrieving her, Cogburn tends to her wound for the time being, but he knows he has to get her medical help soon or else she would not survive. They are pulled from the pit by a revitalized LaBeouf, and Cogburn and Maddie ride out on Little Blackie. Little Blackie eventually collapses after experiencing tiredness from sprinting for miles. Cogburn shoots the horse because he knows they can't stop traveling, then carries Maddie on his back. Before long, they arrive at a general store, where Maddie is led inside. Elizabeth Marvel's character, 40-year-old Maddie, reflects on her experiences over 25 years later. The snake venom had seriously harmed her arm, to the point where it had to be amputated. By the time she regained consciousness, Cogburn had left. Maddie had written to Cogburn after moving back to her family's house in Arkansas, asking him to come see her and pick up his $50 reward, but he never got back to her or showed up. After discovering that the elderly Cogburn is currently a performer in a traveling Wild West show, Maddie, now an adult, writes to him and eventually schedules a reunion to share stories. When Maddie gets to the fairgrounds, he finds out that Cogburn passed away 3 days prior. Cogburn's remains is transferred to Maddie's family cemetery. She takes stock of her life and notes that she has never married and has remained steadfast in her resolve.